Once upon a time, in a beautiful kingdom, there lived a kind and humble water carrier named Shankar. He was loved by everyone in the village because of his cheerful nature and willingness to help others. Every day, he carried water from the river to the homes of the people, always greeting them with a warm smile and a kind word. His happiness was contagious, and people admired his contentment despite his simple life. One day, word of Shankar's kindness and dedication reached the king. Curious about this beloved water carrier, the king sent his minister to summon him to the palace. When Shankar arrived, the king said, "I have heard of your good nature and hard work. From today, you shall serve in my palace, bringing water for me and my guests." Overjoyed, Shankar rushed home to tell his wife the good news. He put on his best clothes and returned to the palace, eager to begin his new job. As days passed, his cheerful spirit and storytelling skills made him a favorite among the king's guests. Even the king himself grew fond of Shankar's presence, often calling him to share amusing tales and lighten his mood. However, not everyone was pleased with Shankar's rising status. The minister, who had once been the king's most trusted companion, grew jealous. He could not bear to see a mere water carrier winning the king's favor. Determined to remove Shankar from the palace, he devised a wicked plan. One evening, the minister visited Shankar at his home and whispered, "Shankar, I must tell you something important. The king has been complaining about the bad smell of your breath. He does not want to embarrass you, but he finds it unbearable." Shankar's face fell with embarrassment. "Oh no, what should I do?" he asked worriedly. The minister pretended to be sympathetic and suggested, to avoid offending the king, wear a mask over your mouth whenever you are in his presence. Trusting the minister's advice, Shankar followed his suggestion. The next day, he entered the palace with a mask covering his face. The king was surprised but did not comment. Days passed, and Shankar continued wearing the mask, never once questioning the minister's words. After a while, the king grew curious and asked the minister, "Why is Shankar always wearing a mask?" Seizing the opportunity, the minister smirked and replied, "My lord, I asked Shankar the same thing. He told me that he wears it because he finds your breath unpleasant." The king's face darkened with anger. He felt betrayed by someone he had grown so fond of. Without further thought, he ordered, "Call the executioner, stand by the palace gate, and when you see a man leave carrying a bouquet of roses, cut off his head immediately." The next day, Shankar arrived as usual, wearing his mask and serving the guests with his usual grace. Pleased with his service, the king handed him a bouquet of roses as a reward. Shankar bowed respectfully and left the king's chamber. As he stepped out, the minister, curious about the gift, stopped him and asked, "Who gave you these roses?" "The king," Shankar replied with a smile. "He wanted to reward me for my service." The minister, blinded by arrogance, snatched the bouquet from Shankar's hands. "I deserve this more than you," he sneered before marching proudly toward the palace gates. The executioner, following the king's orders, saw the minister with the bouquet and swiftly carried out the punishment. The next morning, Shankar returned to the palace as usual. The king, expecting never to see him again, was shocked. "Shankar, you are alive!" he exclaimed. "Tell me, why do you always wear that mask in front of me?" Shankar, still unaware of the deception, humbly replied, "My lord, the minister told me that you found my breath unpleasant, so I wore this mask to avoid disturbing you." The king's eyes widened in realization. "And what happened to the minister?" he asked. Shankar explained how the minister had taken the bouquet and left the palace, unknowingly walking into the executioner's trap. The king was silent for a moment, then burst into laughter. It seems fate has a way of dealing with those who deceive. From that day on, the king trusted Shankar even more and made him his personal advisor. Shankar, with his kindness and wisdom, continued to serve the king faithfully, never letting jealousy or deceit cloud his heart. This story teaches us that honesty and kindness always triumph over lies and deceit. Those who plot against others often fall into their own traps, while the humble and good-hearted rise above every challenge. "The bouquet of roses I gave you yesterday, what happened to it?" the king asked. "The minister took it from me, saying that he deserved it more than I did," Shankar answered innocently. The king burst into laughter. "Indeed, he deserved those roses more than you did," he said. With that, the king removed Shankar's mask and assured him, "You have always been honest and kind. From today, you will be more than just a water carrier, you shall be my royal storyteller." This story teaches us that kindness and patience always triumph over deceit and jealousy. Shankar remained humble and truthful despite the minister's attempt to ruin him. And in the end, justice was served. It also reminds us that those who plot against others out of envy often fall into their own traps. Good deeds and sincerity never go unnoticed. Fate has a way of rewarding those with a pure heart. No matter how difficult the situation, staying true to oneself will always lead to the right path.